What is up, dudes and lady dudes? Welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today we are doing a discussion video talking about Win the Wind Channeler, but a little more specifically what she signifies for other attributes. And this video is going to be specifically about fire attribute if we were to get the fire version of Wind, which would be something like Hita the Fire Channeler. It's a cool card. If you don't know about Charmer cards, we always get one for every of the main four attributes, fire, water, earth, and wind. This one we already have the wind one. Hopefully we get the other three soon because they're cool generic searchability for like very specific attribute type decks. And so we're going to be talking about fire today. We'll get to water and earth later this week most likely. And yeah, we're going to be going through all the decks that actually get like a nice little bump off of this card if this card was fire based, and then just go from there, just have a little discussion. So if you don't know what Win the Wind Channeler does, her main effect says that you can discard her with any other wind monster to add a wind monster with 1500 or less defense from your deck to your hand, except you cannot activate monster effects for the rest of the turn except for wind monsters. So you can summon non-winds, you just can't activate monster effects that aren't wind. So it's a pretty hefty restriction, I'm not going to lie to you, but there are a lot of decks that are just like hyper attribute focused. All wind decks, all water decks, all fire decks. Salamander, right? We'll get there. So yeah, that's the main effect. There is another effect that says when a wind monster you control is destroyed by battle while it's in the hand, you could just special summon it. That's fine. It's just an 1850 beater at that point, but whatever. So yeah, imagine this is this, but for fire, and its name is Hita the Fire Channeler, right? And that's what we're going to be going based off of. So it's a really nice search card. It is a disc. You do have to discard 2 cards to get a search 1, but if you've got a deck that has like 1 and 2 card combos that are very, very powerful, just increasing the consistency of getting to those can be huge for some strategies. So without further ado, let's just jump right into the decks that I think will get the biggest buff off of this. Obviously, you got to start with the big ones, right? Salamander is very, very good, not only for the fact that like Gazelle is at 1, right? And so other than Signet Mining and Salamander Circle, you don't really have any ways of getting to him super consistently, but also the fact that Salamander just has a ton of cards that want to be put in the graveyard. You just want to discard a ton of cards in Salamander. They all give you value in grave, and so it actually makes the discard much better off of the channeler. So very good. It's probably the best one that you may be able to play it in. Next up, we have Infernoid. This is another one where like you end up bricking on Infernoid monsters all the time, but Decatron is the single best starter in all of Infernoid. So being able to search out Decatron a little more consistently in the deck is actually pretty nice. And this card kind of makes you almost feel like you can play a higher count of Infernoid monsters just because they do make your channeler that much more live to get you Decatron to just pop off insanely. That's pretty cool. It's another like powerful one as like a rogue deck that's actually no joke. Next up, we have Firefist. This is another really good one. This deck is not really the same as the other two, and the other two could do stuff with like 1 card combos sort of. This deck not as much. This deck is very, very hard based off of like 2 and 3 card combos, but again, you just can get to that second card. All you have to do is open, like, you play a ton of fire monsters already in a Firefist strategy, so that's already the bonus. But the other good thing is that just like opening one of the starters, any other fire, and the channeler will get you to that 2 card combo, and so it just increases your consistency a little bit, ever so slightly, and can just help you get to those combos, because the deck definitely struggles if you cannot open those exact 2 card combos. So that's really what you're looking for there. But yeah, Firefist definitely a good option as well. Next up, we have Hazy Flame. This is a deck that's been bad for a long time, and a lot of these other decks you'll see are a lot of not so good ones. We went through the already like respectable ones, right? But Hazy Flame is another one. It's a cool artwork like strategy. It just like doesn't do nearly enough. They do have some cool cards like beaters that have like destruction protection, which is kind of cool, but nothing insane, right? So yeah. Next up, we have Fire King avatars, or just Fire Kings in general. I know some people really like this strategy. Unfortunately, their boss monster is kind of dookie, and they do have some cool cards. Like this card, Arvada, is actually like a cool little like just monster negate, generic like monster negate. So there's some cool cards in the strategy. Very cool. A lot of them have like 200 defense, so they're searchable off of the channeler. But it's a cool strategy where your opponent doesn't want to destroy them, otherwise you'll like get them back, especially off of card effects, I believe. specifically. So yeah, pretty cool strategy. Moving on, we got Baton Boxers. This is a cool one too. Keep in mind another thing that I didn't even mention before is we do have the Selection 10 set coming in the OCG, I believe at the beginning of December. We should be finding some of those out fairly soon here, and any of these could end up in there. And if they get 4 or 5 cards of support, even though they were bad, they get 4 or 5 cards of support, and then on top of that get the Fire Channeler, like throw some consistency on top of that. Some of these decks could be doing some pretty cool like rogue things. So don't sleep on all these decks before we get stuff like Selection Pack 10 cards revealed. But yeah, Baton Boxers is the next coolest one. It's cool. Like, the deck doesn't do a ton. It never did do a ton. It was never too like impactful. But I know some people do like the artwork. It is a cool artwork strategy in my opinion. But I don't know. I don't even know what the problem with this deck is. But I know everything in it is pretty much fire attributes. So there's something at least. So yeah. Next up we have Ignite. Ignites are also pretty cool. This deck was actually like meta for like 1 millisecond before it just like faded away. It's pretty cool. And and another thing you might want to add here is you might say like, John, what about Infernoids Knights? The only reason I did not put Infernoids Knights on this list at all is for the sole fact that Ice Sold is light, not fire. Without Ice Sold, the deck does nothing. Without Hulky Fibrax, which I believe is water, the deck does nothing, right? So like, not does nothing, but it's like nowhere near as good. Maybe you could try and play a control variant, but even a control variant wants to go through I Sold at times for like a big power play, just big advantage, like masses of advantage all at once. And without it, like, it's just not as good. So I don't even think I'd try and play it in that deck at all. But Ignites is different, and it's different, but it's not, because a lot of like pendulum decks want to splash in other generic good pendulum cards, and so I don't think you'd see a deck with all fire attribute, unfortunately. But I threw it in here just because I know they do play just like an infinite amount of like Ignite monsters, and so for that fact it could help you get the right scale ones, the right level ones, whatever you're looking for, which could be kind of interesting, could be kind of helpful depending on the situation. All right, next up we move to the Dinosaurs, because there are 2 archetypes that are just dinosaurs that just are all fire all day. Evilsaurs is one of them, or Eviltiles, they're kind of both, but this is definitely a deck that has not aged well, but I do think it does have potential to get support fairly soon. We do have some good just like generic like dinosaur and reptile support at this point, so throw that in, combine it with consistency with Channeler, as well as maybe if this ends up in Selection 10, that could be something cool. But yeah, just consistency with helping them get to their stuff. Drax as well. Drax, again, like, this is just an all battle based like strategy. It's not very good, but I always love the artwork. That's definitely something I will say. I always love like the colors, the brightness of this archetype, and so it's cool. It's cool, but it gets a small buff, but in the most casual of ways. And then we moved to like the random fire stuff. Like we had the Dinosaurs, we had like, I don't know, Hazy Flames and Fire Kings kind of give similar vibes to me. Now we're just in like the pyro action, right? So you got Volcanics. This is a huge one. You know what I mean? So many, like a lot of people just like love Volcanics for some reason. They're a cool burn deck, but they definitely need support. Consistency would help just off of Channeler, especially because you're playing stuff like Scatter Shots in your main deck that you could just discard just to get it, like make use of them in the hand somewhat, to get something better. You have a good search target like Volcanic Rocket, which gets you your Blaze Accelerator cards, which is pretty cool. And yeah, I think this is actually another one that's like this one's one that actually gives me like pretty good hope of like, I think this card has a good chance of getting that support like somewhere, maybe if not in Selection Pack 10, somewhere else, which is pretty cool. So I think that's really nice. Flamvells is the next one. Again, it's just kind of like a weird like pyro fire archetype. It's really random. They do some burn effects. Some of them have like actually not the worst effects, but they're nowhere near great. They have the weird Neo Flamvel cards. They're fine. I mean, like they fit into that same category of it's just all fire, but they don't actually have enough of a cohesive strategy to like actually do anything. And I believe, oh no, we have Lavels. Lavels is the second to last one. And again, this is just like a weird, just so weird of an archetype. Like there's not so much cohesion in this archetype. I love the artwork. They just don't like do enough. This guy looks like Berter from Dragon Ball Z, from the Frieza saga. Crazy. All right, and the last one here is red. This one's kind of weird. I threw this one at the end because it is like an anime deck, so it's like very casual level. But if you love Jack Atlas from 5Ds, this is kind of his deck. He has like a bunch of just cards with red in the name, and he tries to synchro up into like the big fire dragon extra deck monsters. Some of them might even be dark, so I don't even know if this works entirely with that, but you know, consistency wise, at least just like searching out a Resonator, which is a pretty good extender. Searching out like Sprinter isn't the worst card either. You know, there are some interesting cards in the red strategy, but I don't know. This is more of just like an anime thing. If you love Jack Atlas, if you like his anime deck, you can support yours with this card, and it actually might work out fairly decently. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Those are all the archetypes that like were pure enough. Now you got to keep in mind with that restriction saying you cannot activate anything but fire effects for the rest of the turn. It's pretty tough. Like that's a pretty brutal restriction for not just a lot of decks, but like most decks. And so that's definitely something that you had to consider. Is like you can't just splash this in anything. It has to be a deck that almost solely is going to use nothing but fire effects until the end of the turn. Now you can still go into stuff like Appaloosa because it doesn't stop you from making those monsters. You just can't activate their effects. So you could do something like use all fire effects, but at some point link into Appaloosa, and you don't activate Appaloosa that turn, but it's still there and it's part of your board. You still got to that because of the consistency card you played that helped you search out, you know, your combo pieces that otherwise you might not have opened. So it's a really cool card. This one is the fire video. We're going to go into water and earth later on, talking about what decks can actually work with those somewhat. I just tried to throw in everything. I literally went through the entire list of all fire monsters, fire main deck monsters, and just picked out the archetypes that were like, oh, that's like a pure fire deck. Really, it's like a real pure fire deck. So picked out those, and then these were what I was left with. So yeah, that's going to do it for me here, guys. Thank you so much for watching. As always, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more discussion videos like this one in the future, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.